behalf of the family of Isaac Jetmore, on behalf of his parents, Brian and Terry, his grandparents, his immediate family, just want to welcome you all here today. This is one of those times in life when your presence alone can be a source of much strength and encouragement to others. The truth is, Isaac's family may not remember all the words that all of us speak to them today, but what they will remember are the heartfelt hugs you give them. What they will remember is that you were here. So thank you for being here. In our memorial discourse today, I'd like to talk about three things. First, what is Isaac's name? Now, I know that might sound like a strange question, but it has to do with the meaning of the word name in the Bible. And then second, I'd like to talk about two questions about that absolutely need to be answered. And then three, I'd like to offer some concluding words to Isaac's immediate family, and you're all welcome to listen in. So first off, what was Isaac's name? I'd like to open to Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 1. The wise man Solomon said this: "A good name is to be chosen rather than great wealth. To be respected is better than silver and gold." He says a good name, and there's a footnote here in the Bible that says, or a good reputation. It's what your given name stands for, what people think of you when they hear your given name mentioned. And a good name is deemed so valuable that in many lands it's actually legally protected against things like libel and slander. But the proverb says a good name is to be chosen. Who chooses it? The truth is, you do. Your parents choose the name you're given at birth, but you choose what that name will come to stand for, what it will represent. And you make that choice by living your life in a way that earns for you a reputation as someone of worthy deeds, appealing qualities, and right principles. And the proverb says such a good name is better than great wealth. Why? Well, the truth is that when you die, all the money in the world cannot benefit you. But a good name, in particular a good name with God, can benefit you even after you die. And we'll talk more about that in just a few moments. So what name did Isaac choose? What reputation did he earn by the way he chose to live his young life? Well, let's talk a little bit about this remarkable young man and his name. Isaac died on October 23rd, and he is survived by his parents, Brian and Terry, his grandparents, John and Wanda, his aunts, uncles, cousins, and all of the rest of us who came to know and love this young man as if he were part of our own family. Now, Isaac was born on April 2nd, 2001, so he was just 17 and a half years old at the time he died. Isaac was to graduate with the class of 2019 from this very high school, McBride High School, and many of his fellow students are assembled in the gym as we speak, and they're listening and watching to this memorial service, and we're so delighted that they could come. Isaac's religious background, many of you know that he was baptized as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and that happened on September 9th, 2017, and that was Isaac's decision. He chose to get baptized to represent his decision to do God's will first and foremost in his life. But you know, the religious beliefs that Isaac embraced are part of what helped to shape him into the beautiful young man we've come to know and love. But when you think about the name, the reputation, we think about a person's qualities and ways. So what can we say about Isaac's name? Well, over the past couple of days, I've communicated with many of his friends and family, and the responses I received were just overwhelming, heartwarming. I wish I had time to read all of them, but I've assembled some of them to try to convey the beautiful personality that this young man had. For example, many talked about his sense of style and taste. His friend Sarah said, his amazing sense of style is what struck many. Hawaiian shirts are now in style because of Isaac. And I heard a few comments about those Hawaiian shirts. Martha, the mother of one of Isaac's friends, said this, I would refer to him as my little fashionista. The first time I worked with him in our house-to-house preaching work, all he talked about was how important it is to dress well and look our best as we represent Jehovah God. And then Elisha, one of his friends and fellow classmates here at McBride, he put it this way. Isaac constantly introduced me to new artists and older groups as well. His musical taste was easily the best at school, simultaneously discovering new and unknown artists while loving the classics. And he dressed in a unique way that was both goofy yet sleek. He carried himself with poise and walked alongside me as one of my best friends. Again, what a beautiful testimony. Another quality that stood out in the many, many comments I received is what a people person Isaac was. He genuinely cared about people, and he was always willing to show it. For example, his close friend Mike put it this way. Just over a month ago, I was about to leave for vacation with my family, and Isaac wanted to give me my high school graduation present before I left. So after he got out of school, he made a couple of stops to pick up the gifts, which included a generous amount of euros from him and his family. He made it to my house just in the nick of time before we left, and he told me he loved me and wished for me to have a good trip. It made me realize how generous Isaac was and how much he truly cared for people. When was the last time you told a friend, I love you? His friend Brian said, Isaac was genuinely good. That is how I would describe him, just good, through and through, from the bottom of his heart. He had a love and fondness for people. He could talk to anyone, whether they were 2 years old or 92 years old. Remarkable for a young man. Another friend, Sam or Samra, put it this way. He'd pick up on the slightest bit of sadness in your voice and make sure to ask you what was wrong. And he would listen and respect whatever was going on, but he also knew when it was appropriate to cheer you up. If you'd had a bad day or a bad week or even just a bad couple of hours, he would suggest we get together and do something fun to make up for it. It absolutely crushes me to have to press the pause button on our friendship for now. Another thing about Isaac that stood out is a loving son to loving parents. Brittany, longtime friend, said, he had such a love for life and genuinely cared about others, especially his family. When I think about Isaac, I will always think about his mother, Terry. The love those two had for each other was unparalleled, and he was never ashamed to show it. Beautiful. And then Howard, a longtime family friend, brought some interesting comments to this. He said, Isaac brought out facets of Brian and Terry we had never seen before, but all good. Terry, as a mother, was quite honestly enviable. And Brian, as a dad, who else would rock his son to sleep by reading him the CNN headline news or playing him a TED Talk as the boy drifted off to sleep? Only Brian. Isaac was a beautiful blend of all the things we loved about his parents. Brian's wit and sense of humor, and mercifully, Terry's looks and intellect. Thank you, Howard. Something else that about Isaac, and many commented on, was his awesome sense of humor. His friend Brian said, "He made me laugh every single time I talked to him. His ideas, his charisma, his sense of humor, and the way he looked at life would make anyone and everyone smile and laugh constantly." Isaac had an awesome sense of humor. Funny and sweet and polite kid who truly loved Jehovah. And when he talked about the witty expressions, I know many of you might have heard that Isaac would say, "You get more with Jetmore." But I'm here to tell you that I think he stole that from his dad, because I remember hearing that 30 years ago. And then Brittany, another friend, from his endearing smirk, which would come up whenever he knew he was about to make someone laugh, and his big eyebrows, to his crazy love of Hawaiian t-shirts, there are the t-shirts again, and his outlandish expressions that would change constantly, there was no one quite like Isaac. Another quality that several people commented on, and this I thought was just so remarkable. Giovanni, a friend and classmate here at McBride, he said, "He was such a confident yet humble young man and spewed positive energy. Anytime I needed help with anything, I knew the exact person I could go to. He always knew the right thing to say." Imagine, confident yet humble. Those two things don't always go together in this world. What a remarkable combination. In fact, one of his friends said, "How did he pull that off? Being confident yet humble." And then, of course, others mentioned Isaac's love for God. Howard, that longtime family friend, said, "I recall the time over a year ago when I got a one-line text message from Brian on a Saturday night. It said, 'My son got baptized today.'" And then Howard continues, "The best part of Isaac was the beauty of seeing God become real to him, and then seeing that reality start to flourish in his personality." Again, what a beautiful testimony. And then there are what I call my favorite Isaac memories. Different ones shared some of the things about Isaac that they'll never forget. And you know, so often it's not the big things, but just the little things that seem to lodge themselves in our memory and just refuse to be forgotten. For example, Rochelle, good family friend, she said when he was about 5 years old, he prayed to Jehovah to help him quit smoking. And you know, when Rochelle first emailed that to me, I emailed her back because she didn't explain. She just said, "I'm sure you heard that." So I wrote back, "No, I didn't. I'd like to know the backstory." Well, here it is. Brian and Terry did not let Isaac watch too many cartoons when he was young. Instead, he would watch these old classical movies and TV shows from the 1940s and 50s. But it seems like everyone in those movies and TV shows smoked. It was so accepted and popular back then, right? It says, well, Isaac got into the habit of pretending to smoke. even wrapping up little pieces of paper, pretending to smoke. And his parents kept talking to him about how he needed to stop doing that. And then one night, when he was saying his prayers, they overheard him say, "Jehovah, please help me to stop smoking. I know it's bad, but I just like to do it so much. So please help me." And then thankfully he was able to quit, right? Okay. Now Elisha, a friend and classmate here, here's his favorite moment. He says, one summer Isaac and I went riding around Bixby and Long Beach, shooting pictures on our Pentax film cameras. When I asked him if I could see his pictures when he developed them, he said that he did not develop his film, but rather he saved it for the future when he thought he might pick a canister at random, develop the film, and then rediscover the pictures. He said that simply taking the picture was enough for him, knowing he had captured a moment that he had lived in. How beautiful is that? Embrace the moment. Then his aunt and uncle, Tim and Charlene, mentioned one evening when they were on vacation in Los Osos, Isaac tried to teach his uncle how to do a bicycle maneuver called a stoppie. And I understand that involves somehow bouncing the bike off of a wall, perhaps. And he says the place we were staying at had a cinder block wall all around the driveway, which was perfect for stoppies. But it was evening, so they really couldn't see much. The following morning, we noticed over 100 tire marks on the newly painted cinder wall. So Isaac, his aunt, and his uncle spent the whole morning scrubbing the tire marks off the wall. But it was totally worth it, his uncle says. See, that's one of those memories that lodges itself and refuses to be forgotten. His aunt and uncle, Dave and Christy, here's what they remember and will not forget. From when he was very young, he would come and spend the weekend with us. He was such a fun kid. He would get a belt of some sort and tuck his cape into it and then zoom around the house, only to be sidetracked by sneaking another popsicle from the fridge. We had more than several National Treasure movie days, and we would spend hours making hidden treasure maps and then making up stories to fit them. And then finally, his grandparents, John and Wanda, here's their favorite memory. When it came to breakfast, Isaac had to be in the middle of helping his grandma, at first standing on a chair at the stove and stirring the oatmeal. And then she added, he loved when Grandma would read him stories. He had his own shelf of books to choose from, and he loved it when Grandma would take him to the library in the house. He was always looking after us and caring for us, mowing the lawn, doing the chores, and he was our go-to guy for electronic stuff. Now, again, these are just a fraction of the overwhelming replies from people who wanted to comment, and I wish I had time to read them all. But these are just some of the things that endeared Isaac to so many, and that convince us that he has sealed for himself a good name with his friends and family, and most important, with Jehovah God. I mentioned that we want to consider two questions about death that need answering. When we lose a loved one in death, it's only natural to wonder first, why do people, even those who choose a good name, die? And then second, more important, is there any hope for those who have died? Now, I would like to answer those questions the way I think Isaac would answer them, drawing from the beliefs, the Bible-based beliefs that this young man held dear. Now, I recognize that many, maybe most in attendance today may not share those beliefs, But you know, friends, there's one thing that each and every one of us here and in the gym have in common today. We've come here out of love and respect for this young man. And you know, one way we can show that love and respect is by considering some of the religious beliefs that helped to shape him into the beautiful young man we came to know and love. So here goes. Why do people, even good people, die? Now, the answer to that is not that God made man to die. That just doesn't make sense. Now, let me explain. There are giant tortoises that can live 150 years. There are trees, living things on earth that are thousands of years old. To suggest that God made man to live at most 70 or 80 years or to have life cut short far beyond or before that, that would be to say that God cares more about tortoises and trees than he does humans. That just doesn't make sense. So why do people, even those who choose a good name, die? Well, let me answer that by opening to Romans chapter 5 and verse 12. There the Christian apostle Paul writes, "That is why, just as through one man sin entered into the world, and death through sin, so death spread to all men because they had all sinned." Notice it says one man. The one man was Adam. Adam, along with his wife Eve, were at first created perfect, and they were created with the gift of free will. Now, when Adam and Eve later chose to use that free will to rebel against God, they lost the perfection they had at first. So when they thereafter conceived children, the inheritance they passed on to their children was sin. And in the Bible, sin refers to a condition characterized by an inborn tendency toward wrongdoing, as well as weaknesses that make us susceptible to things like disease, aging, and death. And the sad reality is that in an imperfect world, death sometimes comes prematurely, even in tragic ways. Untimely death, the Bible explains, is often the result of time and unexpected events. That's found at Ecclesiastes chapter 9 and verse 11. Now, for reasons that are consistent with his purpose and that we humans may not always fully understand, Jehovah God does not shield us from the realities of imperfection or unexpected events. I might illustrate it this way. Imagine you're working on a challenging puzzle, a big jigsaw puzzle, perhaps of a beautiful landscape, and you assemble most of the pieces, you get down toward the end, and you notice that several pieces seem to be missing. Now, understandable, you might feel disappointed, frustrated, maybe even a bit angry because the picture is not complete, it's not perfect. But still, if you step back and look, you realize that more than enough of the pieces are in place for you to grasp what the picture looks like and maybe even visualize what the missing pieces would look like. Now, something similar happens when we study the Bible. You see, piece by piece, we learn about God's personality and his ways, his purpose, and a certain pattern emerges. Yet there may be times when some of the pieces seem to be missing. I mean, for example, when confronted with tragedy, we may ask, we may wonder, why God? And understandably, we may feel disappointed, frustrated, maybe even angry for the moment. But here's the point. Those who, like Isaac, make a careful study of the Bible, they come to know that while the Bible does not answer every question so as to give us a perfectly complete picture, the Bible does give us more than enough pieces to see the picture and to know two things about Jehovah God without question. Number one, he is not to blame when someone we love dies. And number two, he can fix it. He has the will and the power to reverse death. Now that brings me to the second question. What hope is there for those who have died? Well, I'd like to share with you the Bible-based hope that Isaac believed in with all his young heart and that I know his family believes in. It's the Bible's promise of a resurrection. Now, does God really have the desire to restore the dead to life? Well, let me turn to the Bible book of Job, chapter 14, and we'll take a look at verses 14 and 15. Now, the setting here, this Bible book tells of the faithful man Job and the severe trials that he faced in his life. And at one point, the trials included the loss of his children, so he was a grieving parent. And in the throes of his suffering, it came to a point where Job actually saw death as a welcome relief. But he was a man of faith. Let's notice what he says, Job 14, verses 14 and 15. If a man dies, can he live again? I will wait all the days of my compulsory service until my relief comes. You, God, will call, and I will answer you. You will long for the work of your hands. Let me just focus on this verse for a moment. He says, work of your hands. You know, as creatures made from the dust of the earth, all humans are, in a sense, the work of God's hands. But those who make a good name with God, those who choose to live in such a way to earn a good name with God, they become the work of God's hands in a special sense. Why? Because they let God mold them. See, as I mentioned earlier, God created humans with free will. And what that means is that he doesn't pry open our heart and force us to love or worship or serve him. Someone once said, there is no handle on the outside of the door to the human heart. It must be opened from within. You see, faithful humans like Job, and I would add like Isaac, choose to open that door, put their heart in God's hands, and in effect say, Jehovah, please mold me into the kind of person who is precious and beautiful in your eyes. You see, and then such ones, they not only make a good name with God, but they become precious to him. And if they should die, well, Job says of Jehovah, you will long or yearn for the work of your hands. Another translation here says, you will long for the person your hands have made. Now, what does that tell us about Jehovah God? He has a special attachment to those who choose to use their life in such a way as to make a good name with him. And that attachment is so strong that if they should die, Jehovah misses them, and with all his heart, he yearns to restore them to life. So what does that mean for Isaac's family, his mom, his dad, his grandparents, and all the rest? It means simply that you are not the only ones who miss this dear young man. Jehovah misses him too, and Jehovah, with all his heart, yearns to give Isaac back to you. Now, does God really have the power to resurrect the dead? Well, of course he does. Our Creator, the one who created life, should easily be able to restore life to someone who's already lived. And in fact, God has already done that. The Bible reports 8 cases, 8 instances of when God empowered prophets, apostles, and Jesus himself to raise the dead back to life on earth. And in thinking about Isaac and in thinking about these 8 cases, I couldn't help but reflect on the fact that 4 of the 8 cases of resurrections in the Bible are of children brought back to life and given back to their parents. The prophet Elijah raised the son of a widow and gave the boy back to his mother. Elisha, his successor, raised the son of a woman who had been hospitable to him and gave that boy back to his mother. Jesus raised the son of the widow at the city of Nain, and the Bible says he gave him back to his mother. And then Jesus later resurrected a 12-year-old girl, the daughter of a Jewish ruler, and gave her back to her father. What's the lesson for us? Jehovah is deeply aware of the unique grief of a parent who loses a child in death. And he wants such parents to know that he is able and willing to do something about it. And I'd like to read to you just the one account, that of Jesus raising this 12-year-old girl. It's found in the Bible book of Mark, chapter 5. We'll read verses 38 to 42. It's Mark chapter 5, verses 38 to 42. Now, the setting here is this 12-year-old girl is gravely ill. Her father leaves her at home, goes out and hunts down Jesus, pleads with Jesus to come back to his house to cure his daughter. But while the man and Jesus are on their way to the man's home, the little girl dies. But notice what happens. We'll start Mark chapter 5, verse 38. So they came to the house of the presiding officer of the synagogue, and he saw the commotion and those weeping and wailing loudly. After stepping in, he said to them, "Why are you weeping and causing this commotion? The child has not died, but is sleeping." At this they began to laugh at him scornfully. But after sending them all outside, he took the child's father and mother and those with him, and he went in where the child was. Then taking the hand of the child, he said to her, "Talitha kumi," which means, when translated, "Little girl, I say to you, get up." And immediately the girl rose and began walking. She was 12 years old. And at once they, the parents, were beside themselves with great ecstasy. Just focus on this account for just a moment. You notice that when he steps into the house, Jesus tells them the little girl is sleeping. Now, Jesus knew that the girl had died. So why did he say she was sleeping? Well, the Bible often compares death to sleep. Why? Well, for 2 reasons at least. First, both sleep and death are an unconscious state. You see, and that explains that according to the Bible, there's nothing conscious that survives at death. But the second reason the Bible and Jesus here compare death to sleep is that both can be undone. You see, just as you can awaken someone from a deep sleep, Jesus was telling the parents and those there that he had been empowered by God to awaken this little girl from the sleep of death. And that's exactly what he did. And did you notice the parents' reaction? The account there in verse 42 says, they were beside themselves with great ecstasy. The original language words here can actually mean to be out of one's mind. They were overcome with wonder. They were beyond astonished, amazed, and awed. So what does this account teach us? What does it tell us? the very mention of the extreme reaction of the parents when they were reunited with their daughter, it tells us again, Jehovah understands the anguish of grieving parents, and he wants you to know that he has the will and the power to erase the need for the grief. In fact, Jehovah God has empowered his Son to bring about a future resurrection, but on a much, much larger scale. And that promise directly involves Isaac David Jetmore. Now, a resurrection to where? Well, if we flip back to the last book of the Bible, Revelation, chapter 21, the Bible here describes a beautiful time and place. Revelation 21, verses 3 and 4. We read, "With that I heard a loud voice from the throne say, 'Look, the tent of God is with mankind, and he will reside with them, and they will be his people. And God himself will be with them. And he will wipe out every tear from their eyes, and death will be no more. Neither will mourning, nor outcry, nor pain be any more. The former things have passed away.'" Notice, death will be no more. Is this a description of heaven? No. It's talking about a place where there will be no sickness, no old age, no tragic accidents, no death. But this is not talking about heaven. How do we know? Well, there are two clues right in the verses themselves. In verse 3, you remember it said of this place, it's with mankind. So these conditions where there'll be no sickness, no death, will prevail among mankind. Mankind lives on the earth. Spirit creatures live in heaven. But there's an even stronger clue in a way in verse 4. It says of this place where there will be no more death, it says death will be no more. So this is talking about a place where death once existed, but then ceased to exist. There has never been death in heaven, but death has had a long and painful existence on this earth. So this beautiful prophecy here at Revelation 21, 3 and 4, it's a description of the earth, but in the future, when under the rule of God's kingdom, a heavenly government, paradise conditions will prevail, and humans will enjoy far more than the short lifespan they have at present. It will be a time when the prayer that Jesus taught us to pray will be fully realized. A time when God's will is done on earth, everywhere on earth, as in heaven. It will be into such a paradise earth that the vast majority of those who have died will be resurrected. Now let me ask you this. Does that sound a little too good to be true? Well, you know what? It is too good to be true if you look at it from a human perspective. But this promise does not come from any human. It comes from Jehovah God, our Creator. And as we've seen, Jehovah has the two things needed to make this and all his other promises come true: unlimited power and an unstoppable will. And what that means is, because Jehovah has promised it, there is nothing in heaven or on earth that could prevent Jehovah from fulfilling his promise to restore the dead to life. And meanwhile, we can find some comfort in knowing that Isaac is now in the safest place in all the universe, and that is in Jehovah's perfect and unfading memory until Jehovah's due time to restore him to life. In looking back then, do we see why it's so important that we choose to live each day in a way that earns a good reputation, a good name, not just with our family and friends, but primarily with God. Now, finally, I'd like to just say a few closing words to Isaac's immediate family, his mom, his dad, his grandparents, aunts, uncles. We pray for you. May Jehovah's Spirit empower you. May you feel Jehovah's hand in your life as never before. And may the help of friends and family sustain you. And may the Bible's promise of a resurrection into God's new world, may it fill your heart with hope. And finally, may the gift of imagination help you to keep that hope alive in your heart. You know, some years ago when my mother died, a friend of mine sent me a card, and speaking about the Bible's promise of a resurrection, he said something simple but profound that I've never forgotten. He said, imagine the reunion. Imagine details about that reunion. Imagine your reunion with Isaac. Imagine details about that reunion. First hug, first words, first tears of joy. Now, just to illustrate the power of imagination, I'd like to read to you an essay. This was prepared many years ago by a young witness student in Australia. She was a high school student, so probably the same age as many of the students listening in the auditorium. And the class was given an assignment to write an essay entitled 500 Years from Now. And this young witness girl decided to write about the resurrection hope. And drawing on a vivid imagination, she imagines herself being resurrected in God's new world. And let me read to you what she wrote. Opening my eyes, I stared around and tried to think where I was. Yes, now I remembered, but this scene was different. Puzzled, I looked around. Warm sunlight filtered through the thickly congregated trees, casting long shadows into the shade of each other. I noticed some animals watching me from surrounding trees. The desire to discover my surroundings now urged me to leave the little glade. Beyond the bordering trees extended a large park-like area, and in the distance, I could see people. Eager to find out more about my surroundings, I hurried toward them and had nearly reached them when a huge golden form sprung from the lush green grass and knocked me down. With a scream of horror, I tried to push the lion from me. But instead of clawing me, as I had imagined, it did little else than to place a velvety paw on my stomach and lick my face. The people by this time reached me and laughingly called the lion away. Still shaking, I was helped to my feet by a very pretty young lady who apologized for the lion's behavior. "Oh, he's always like that in the morning," she explained. The people introduced themselves, then one asked, "And where are you from? I think you're new here." "I don't know where I am," I replied. "You see, the last thing I remember is being involved in an accident." "Perhaps I can help you," said one of the women, drawing out a yellow book from the pocket of her bright floral gown. "Your name?" I gave her my name, and then, after checking the book, she led me over to a small path. Many people were gathered here busily planting vegetables. Astonished, I watched as a small child led a panther among the planters, and then the child stopped to pick up a cobra which lay in its path. I tried to shout a warning, but the child had already picked up the snake. Smiling, my guide told me to sit down on the grass. Obediently, I took my seat and nervously eyed the lion that had ambled over and sat down beside me. For the next hour, I listened, enthralled, as my guide related the events that had taken place on earth during the few hundred years I had been asleep in death. First, she explained from the Bible, at Zechariah 1:18, that there had been survivors of this destruction, of which she was one, and into their care had been entrusted the job of making earth a paradise. She went on to tell me that the time had come for the resurrection of all those who had fallen asleep in death, as foretold at John 5:28 and 29. The resurrection had been a gradual process, she explains, and was still in progress. She then went on to tell me the thrilling news that my parents were now comfortably settled in a home not far from where we sat. My guide anticipated the effect this news would have on me, for she was already on her feet and leading me to the path that led to my parents' home. I gratefully thanked her and sped up the winding pathway into the waiting arms of my parents. Imagine the reunion. Imagine details about that reunion. Brian Terry, one day soon, that story will be your reality in God's new world. Now, at this point, we'd like to conclude our memorial discourse with a word of prayer, and then we have a few announcements to make. Jehovah God, our creator, life giver, we're grateful to you for giving us the spark of life, but we approach you at this time with such mixed feelings. Our hearts are hurting for Isaac's parents. We feel for them, we feel for their pain, and we pray that you will find ways through your people, through your word, and with your Holy Spirit to give them all the comfort and strength and help that they will need to make it through not just the immediate days, but the weeks and months and years ahead. May you comfort them until the time when that comfort would no longer be needed, when they're reunited with their dear son in your new world. We pray your blessing upon the rest of this day and the events that have been planned, and we ask for your forgiveness where we sin, and we pray in the name of Jesus. Amen. Well, again, I'd like to thank the at least 1,584 in attendance today, including those in the gym. At this point, I'm going to ask Shane Blanchard to come up to the stage. The family has asked him to perform a song entitled, "He Will Call." That song is from the songbook Sing Out Joyfully to Jehovah, published by Jehovah's Witnesses. Shane, please.
Thank you. Please feel free to sing along. Life like a mist appears just a day and disappears tomorrow. All that we are can quickly fade away, replaced with tears and sorrow. If a man should die, can he live again? Hear the promise God has made. He will call, the dead will answer. They will live at his command. For he will have a longing for the work of his own hand. So have faith and do not wonder, for God can make us stand, and we will live forever as the word of His own hand. Our God, though they may pass away, never be forsaken. All those asleep who in God's memory stay, from death He will awaken. Then we'll come to see all that life can be, paradise eternally. He will call, the dead will answer, they will live at His command, for He will have a longing for the word of His own hand. So have faith and do not wonder, for God can make us stand, and we will live forever as the word of His own hand. We love you, Isaac.
And Shane was accompanied there by his sister, so we thank them for that. At this time, we'd like to invite you to look at the screens, and we're going to sit back and view a beautiful video presentation. So please watch.
Waking up to kiss you when nobody's there. The smell of your perfume still stuck in the air. It's hard. Yesterday I thought I saw your shadow running around. It's funny how things never change in this short time. So far from the start. Nobody's there. Smell of your perfume still stuck in the air. Words I never got to say the first time. Yesterday I thought I saw your shadow when we were the children. It's funny how this never changes. It's just so far. If the whole stars, and I wanna tell you everything, the words I never got to see the first time around. And I remember everything from when we were the children playing in this fairground. Wish I was there with you now. If the whole world was watching, I'd still dance with you. Drive highways and byways to be there with you. Over and over, the only truth, everything comes back to you. I saw that you moved on with someone new. In the pub that we met, he's got his arms around you. It's so hard, so hard tell you everything, the words I never got to say the first time around. And I remember everything from when we were the children playing in this fairground. Wish I was there with you now. As if the whole world was watching, I'd still dance with you. Drive highways and byways to be there with you. Over and over, the only truth. Everything comes back to you. You still make me nervous when you walk in the room. Them butterflies, they come alive when I'm next to you. Over and over, the only truth. Everything comes back to you. And I know that it's wrong, that I can't move on, but there's something about you. As if the whole world was watching, I'd still dance with you. Drive highways and byways to be there with you. Over and over, the only truth. Everything comes back to you. You still make me nervous when you walk in the room. Them butterflies, they come alive when I'm next to you. Over and over, the only truth. Everything comes back to you. Everything comes back to you.
I love the Jews. Mom, I'm not doing it anymore. I already practiced too much.
Hey, Isaac, guess what? I got this cigarette from my grandmother's purse, and I want to go smoke it behind school, after school. Why don't you come and smoke it with me? Here. Come on, smoke the cigarette. Why not?
Because...
What are you, chicken?
Because a cigarette can give you cancer, and your lungs will get really black, and you can eventually have lung cancer.
Who cares? It's just one cigarette. It's not cancer, it's one cigarette.
Except tobacco is addicting, so you might keep on smoking it.
problems when I reach the top, right? I'm gonna ride the skateboard down the block, right? Oh, sun up until sundown, trying not to think about you.
Now perform a birthday show. Go up.
I'm gonna ride the skateboard down the block, right? Forget my problems when I reach the top, right? I'm gonna ride.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow, but if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow.
And someday I want to go to Costa Rica and zip line because it would be so cool just shooting through the jungle.
Carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. Please swallow your pride if I have faith. You need to borrow, for no one can fill those of your needs that you won't let show. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on, for it won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on. You just call on me, brother, when you need a hand. We all need somebody to lean on. I just might have a problem that you'll understand. We all need somebody to lean on. If there is a load you have to bear that you can't carry, I'm right up the road. I'll share your load if you just call me. Call me if you need a friend. Call me. If you need a friend. If you ever need a friend, call me.
To be able to attend, and this certainly helped to that end. So can we express our appreciation to them? Isaac's family believes that Isaac would have wanted them to offer some information today to those who are grieving over the loss of this beautiful young man. And so we just want to mention, and near the gymnasium where so many are assembled, there are some tables with some literature that directly deals with how to cope with the loss of a loved one in death. And the family believes that you might find that information helpful, so please take the literature, and there's no cost for it. In just a moment, the family will be exiting this auditorium to go over to the gym, and they want to interact with the students. And we'd like to ask the rest of you here to please remain seated, because the video feed will be reversed, and what happens in a few moments at the gym, you'll be able to see on the screens here as the family interacts with the students and maybe invites the students to make some comments. So please remain seated, and then a little later there will be some refreshments available in what they call the quad here. They've got some drinks and some light refreshments available that you can enjoy a little later. Okay, thank you very much.
As soon as I see it on there. As soon as I see it on there. As soon as I see it. Tell me when you're ready.
Again, we'd like to thank everyone for being here. Good. Once again, we'd like to thank everyone for being here. Again, we'd like to thank everyone for being here. Friends, family, and Isaac's friends. So many of you that we don't know yet. We want to thank you all for being here, showing your solidarity and support, friendship, love. We appreciate that you're here, and we thank you for that. A very close family friend said something that I thought was truly remarkable, and I'd like to share it with all of you. If prayer was something that we could see visibly as they ascended to heaven, you wouldn't be able to see the sky. And that's because so many of you have expressed yourself to God on behalf of Isaac and his parents, and for yourselves, for all of us who are grieving. We're sad for Brian and Terry. We're sad for their son. He was our friend, and we miss him deeply. It's not often you get to see how much people really love and care about you and your family. And we know that he was a truly amazing young man. It was beautiful to see the video and hear some of the commentary that was made. A glimpse inside his beautiful heart. And he loved deeply many of the people that he cared about, which included everybody here. We're comforted and we're grateful that all of you have come here in this difficult time to celebrate this beautiful life. Over the last few days, the family and friends have been to the school and have been so touched by expressions, stories, experiences, a recounting of situations and things that you yourselves have experienced with Isaac. We hope that you continue to share your memories with all of us, not just today, but in the future, because we need to hear those things as they will provide comfort. Isaac might have been an only child, but his family was truly global. I've had interactions myself with some of you who've crossed continents to be here today, and that's remarkable. He had some brothers and sisters, cousins and aunts all over the world. These friendships span generations, and he always freely gave of his time and energy to young people and anyone who would listen. You are all part of this, and for that we are eternally grateful. He would be so happy to know that you are all here to comfort each other. And in a moment, we'd like to invite some of you, particularly his friends from school and those who knew him on a close level, if you'd like, to come up and express yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you knew and what made your friendship with him special. Tell us your name, and maybe tell us, if you remember, where you met him. We'd all like to hear it. Now, to begin, we'd like to invite a cousin, his cousin Jessica, to read a poem. And maybe that'll give you a moment to gather your thoughts. And for those of you who'd like to express yourself, we'd like to invite you to come up, and we'll give you the mic, the one I'm holding, so that the folks back in the main auditorium can hear what you have to say. And we also have a live video feed, so we'll look forward to hearing from you. So, Jessica?
I'd like to just share a poem written by a very close friend of the family. It's moments like Isaac's that make many take pause. It makes you take notice of all of life's flaws. But Isaac saw past that. He lived like a boss. It was his energy and spirit that make all of us feel his loss. Live like Isaac did. Isaac made everyone laugh. He had a strong mind. He was stylish and gentle. He was one of a kind. Live like Isaac did. He was a friend, a nephew, a cousin. He was an incredible grandson and son. His love for his mom and dad was second to none. Live like Isaac did. Isaac had faith, and each day he gave nod. Through his words and his actions, his trust was in Jehovah God. Live like Isaac did. He spared his time to all he knew. He embraced all life had to give. If there's one thing Isaac would want for us all, it would be for all of us to live like Isaac did.
Thank you, Jessica. That was beautiful. Now we'd like to invite his friends and classmates. If you'd like to come up, we'd be happy to hear from what you have to say if you'd like to share a few words with the group.
My
name is Connor McCorkle. A lot of you know me. I go to McBride High School. But Isaac, there's so much to say. I've known him since I was born, basically. Or he's known me since I was born, since he was 3.5 months older than me. He always got that on me. And, you know, what more could you want in a friend? He was really everything. You could fight with him, and then the next day, you'd be able to punch him and give him a hug, but he still loved you. You always loved him. Me and Isaac used to skate together pretty regularly, like probably twice a week, come 9th grade and 10th grade, and then that kind of stopped with the homework load increasing and everything, but Isaac was my skate buddy. He was the one that I learned how to do all the tricks with. He's the one who taught me how to do some stuff, and we just had lots of fun, and really looking forward to seeing him again.
Thank you for that.
My name is Michael Harvey. I was very close to Isaac. And everyone here knows Isaac. And just as all of us know Isaac, he loved each and every one of you. And if Isaac taught me anything over the years, he taught me to not judge people. And when we first met, the first time we met, we weren't very fond of each other. We didn't really get along. But then a couple months later, we went on a family vacation together, and we gave it another try. And I was so thankful because from that moment, it blossomed into a beautiful friendship and that I will never forget about. And Brian and Terry, before Isaac passed, he used to always talk about how he could really open up to you, Terry, and talk to you about anything. And just about a month ago, Brian, he talked to me about how it felt like you were his friend. And whenever you guys had conversations, it was so nice because he could really open up to you. We're all going to miss Isaac, but we're going to look forward to seeing him again.
Tiana?
Okay. Hi. So how I met Isaac, I actually met him on Snapchat. I don't know how I got him on Snapchat, but I knew he was an engineer. So I texted him because I had cracked my phone. I was like, hey, Isaac, can you fix my phone? And then he was just like, yeah, I guess. So he was like, I'm going to need to buy the stuff and so I can fix it and stuff. And then, out of nowhere, I sat next to him in class. In Mr. E class, I was so excited. I was like, Isaac, sit next to me. Isaac, sit next to me. Oh, Lord. I had the time of my life in that class. And then I remember every time I talked to Isaac, he used to say these really big words. It was so big, I didn't understand nothing he was saying. I used to go home and Google those words, because like sometimes when he used to talk to me, I used to be like, okay, like I didn't know what to say because it was so big. And then I remember I used to see him around class. It used to be good, school. And he used to just look at me. He just used to give me that look and that smirk. It was just like I used to be like, okay, Isaac. But yeah, Isaac was a good kid. He really was. I remember there was a time where I was like, Isaac, let me meet your parents. Like, I need to meet your parents. He was like, why? I was like, Isaac, I need to know who your parents are. Like, we're going to be together. But yeah, he was just a good person. Like, he always told me about you guys, how you guys met and everything. I used to always ask him. He showed me pictures. Yeah, you know what? We just need to keep our heads up because right now he don't want to see us crying. He don't. He want to see us happy. That's who Isaac is. You've never seen him down. He's always smiling. He always is. And that's what we need to do. We need to be strong for him. We really do. Thank you.
So hold them up together because this one is for the other. Got it. Right up your mouth.
Yeah,
There you go.
okay.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Elisha. Isaac was one of my best friends. I met him in middle school, and we weren't friends until the 8th grade, but I always admired him, and I envied his popularity, but he didn't care about being popular. He didn't try it. People just loved him. Everyone loved him. And in 8th grade, we became friends in robotics class, and he's just a whiz at everything he touched, so it was pretty fun. We were able to goof off a little bit. We decided on coming to McBride together. It was Connor McCorkle and I, along with Isaac, just sitting down talking about it. And coming here, it was us three against the world. And he always carried himself with just poise and grace. But everyone felt like they could approach him, and people just gravitated towards him. And he was the center of all of our friendships. And the most important thing he taught me was just to be myself, regardless of circumstances and environment. Don't let other people change you, and just live life how you see it. It would make you the happiest. So thank you for blessing me with such a great friend and brother.
My name is Ludovico. Isaac was very close to me. There's not nearly enough time to describe what kind of a friend Isaac was, but I'm going to try. He was the type of friend that I could be doing the most meaningless, boring task, and as long as he was by my side, I would be having the greatest time ever. You could lock me in a porta potty with him, and I'd still have a blast. He was really focused on caring for people and entertaining them, which I value a lot, and I valued a lot in him. I remember whenever I was in the car with him driving, one time, or all the times that he brought me back home, I would actually wish for the traffic to get worse, because that would mean that I would get to talk to him more. I would meet up with him at 5 p.m. and the next time I check my phone, it's 10:30 and my dad's screaming at me to get home. He really was my best friend, and I'm really going to miss you, Chief.
Thank you for that. So hold them up together.
My name is Gavin McCorkle. I'm Connor's cousin. Growing up, I didn't really have a brother, but Isaac and my cousin kind of became my brothers. We did everything together. I remember we used to go to Longfellow Elementary and just ride around scooters or skateboards and just hang out and do that almost every other day. That's what I'm going to really remember about him most, is just hanging out. He was one of those people where no matter what you're doing, as long as you're talking to him, you're having fun. He always knew how to make you be happy, or he'd crack a joke and make you laugh. He could really make anyone laugh. Doesn't matter who he was talking to. You could meet a complete stranger on the street and just make them laugh. That's just who he was, and I'm gonna miss him.
Thank you very much. Please. Hold them up together. Okay, very good. Thank you.
I'm obviously not a student here, but I was Isaac's Auntie Robin. I don't have anything prepared, but to see all of you right here is just overwhelming how much everybody loved him. And he was a special kid. And when he was born, I remember my kids were so excited. Terry and Brian, along with Jessica and John and Wanda, we were all going to go to London. And I remember they were going to bring Isaac, but he was too little. And Terry said, no, he might be too little. And Jack said, Aunt Terry, put him in a suitcase and bring him. We want him to come. Don't leave him. And they were so mad that he wasn't coming, and he was only 2. Also, one time, Wanda, they talked about you making oatmeal. He was at my house, and he was like 4. And I said, well, okay, I'll make you oatmeal. And he looked and he said, you're not doing it right. Grandma doesn't do it like this. But he was truly a special kid, even though we didn't live near him. My kids just adored having him over. He was funny. We loved him skateboarding. And there's not too many kids his age where the old aunt could call up and talk and talk. And I just remember the last time when Terry and Brian were in Palm Springs, I called and we were talking, and I said, oh, Isaac, somebody's calling me. I have to get off, but I'll call you back. Okay. And then he picked the phone right back up. He was just a very, very special kid, and we love him. And Terry and Brian, you just did the best job. And Terry, he adored you. You did so much with him. And Brian, he just loved both of you.
Hold them both together, James. Hold it. No, this is not that.
My name is Jim Oliva, and I'm the old fart for Isaac. You know, we don't have kids, but Isaac was Isaac, you know. My memories mainly are when he was really young, and I loved to tease him, and every time I had a chance over there at the house, I would always want to get him, and Isaac just loved that. He could see that the chance was, and I chased him all around the yard, running after him, and I finally caught him, and I would tickle him and grab him, even spin him around. He would laugh and laugh and laugh. And then the day came when I was chasing him and I couldn't catch him. He was too fast for me. And then he knew it. You know, he knew it, and of course we laughed. And I always remember the special stories I would tell him at the house. And he had an imagination, and he would love to listen to the stories. And I made up this story about the gold bars of Egypt that were stolen and brought over here to America, and his eyes got so big, and I told him they were behind the couch in a chest, and I didn't think he really believed me, but just not too long ago, one of the last times I talked to him, he says, you remember that story you told me about the gold bars? I said, yeah. He says, I believed you. He believed me. Anyway, and I'll always remember, of course, Eddie and running around chasing with him, and Isaac loved that dog, and we did too. But he was a special kid, always, always, always Terry. Thank you for bringing him into our lives. And we'll see him again.
Hi, my name's Tristan McCulloch. I really think that if it wasn't for our love for our God Jehovah, that we probably would have never met each other. And I know that there's a saying that says, not who you are today, but what you can become tomorrow. And the short time I knew Isaac, and he really showed that his love for Jehovah never changed. He wanted to keep it growing. And even who he was personally, he wanted to become a better person. And I know we'll all miss him.
Hi, my name is Cruz Gomez. Me and Isaac used to study together every Saturday, 11 o'clock. He'd come by to my house. We'd talk for 30, 40 minutes, maybe even an hour, depending on what it was. The things I could say about Isaac Jetmore, he was every word that came out of his mouth was just something so important and so intelligent and he was just one of the smartest people I knew. I always listened to him talk about morals and how to be just a faithful and a good person to anybody and everybody around you. And I just want to thank you guys for giving me somebody that I can look up to every day. And anytime I ever think about doing something maybe that's not the best thing to do, I always think about Isaac and ask what would he do. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm just completely overwhelmed at all the love and the outpouring we've seen from our dear friends and family and everyone at the school. As you know, of course, Isaac was our life, and I'm glad he got to share his life with all of you. All the other parents and the kids that he hung around with were just amazing, and they helped mold who he was too. And his mentors, his older people that he hung out with, and just everybody was amazing. He was a funny kid. I remember at a young age he said some interesting things. He was about 7 years old in the back of the car. We're driving around, and he says, "Mom, how will I know when I find the girl that I want to marry?" And I said, "Well, you'll know, and you'll know that feeling in your heart." He says, "Well, what if she's not good for me, but I really still love her?" And I said, "Well, you're just going to ask me, and I'm going to tell you to break up with her." And then he says, "What if she just wants to marry me for my money?" I'm like, "Honey, you don't have any money." I don't know where you're getting that from. But those were kind of the conversations that we would have. And, I really miss as they got older, and as he became a senior this year, all the boys would drive themselves to school. But those were some precious times when we would carpool with you guys, and the conversations they would have, their arguments. They disagree on certain things, but they just loved each other and respected that they had different opinions. And anyway, I'm thankful he came into my life, and I'm glad that all of you knew who he was and that we could share him with you. And again, we're just so overwhelmed at the outpouring of love. This is a hard thing to do and go through, but it is just making it so much easier, because I just feel all the love in the room from everyone, and it's incredible. It's really a gift from Jehovah, and I'm eternally grateful to all of you. Thank you so much.
This is one of the worst days of my life. But all of you being here are making it better. And I thank you for it. We've had people come in from Europe. We've had well wishes from Asia, the Middle East, Midwest, people flown in from all over, shared just beautiful, beautiful thoughts, and it really touched us. There are just a couple people that I want to acknowledge because of the unique situation. Jerry, who was where are you, Jerry? Jerry was a neighbor right in the neighborhood where Isaac died. And I just happened to meet him sort of accidentally. I'd pulled up where there was a little shrine. And there was candles out there, and he pulled up right next to it, and me and my brother were there, and he said, did you know this young man? And I'm like, yeah, it's my son. And he goes, I want you to know that he died pretty quick, not a lot of pain, he didn't bleed out, but he says, but we stayed with him the whole time. And there was 2 other nurses too. I don't know if I just lost power here. But there were two other nurses too. One of them's name is Bethany, and I didn't know if she was able to make it here today. Another was a lady that lives right across the street. It just happened to be another nurse. They stayed there. They took measures that they could, but he was too far gone. So I'm grateful for that he didn't linger in pain. The hard part for me and my family, and maybe the rest of us, is now we got to keep going forward. And I know with the support and the encouragement that we're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. So from the bottom of my heart, just thank you all for being here. This is just overwhelming. Thank you. I love you.
There are a lot more stories to tell. There are a lot more experiences that you've had that we haven't heard yet. Think about them. Maybe write them down. Maybe send them in a short note, in a text, in a card. Doing it that way, we'll be able to remember it for a long, long time. And it will add to the tears as well as the joys that this fine young man brought to all of you. So we hope you give that some thought. Many of us, of course, are saddened, and we've come from far, far places to share our sadness and to share our joy too, to share our friendship and our solidarity, our loyalty, and our commitment, not only to God, but to our friends. Thank you for coming. Take some time before you leave to visit with a family and express to yourself. Even if they don't remember what you said, they'll remember the hug. If you'd like to get a little more information about the comfort found in the Bible, there are various stations located in the area where you're welcome to seek some information that will provide comfort for you. Thank you once again to the staff, faculty, school, and all of you who had a part in sharing in this sad but momentous occasion. Thank you again for coming.